You're listening to Fire Ecology Chats, a podcast series by the Association for Fire Ecology.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bob Keane. I am the editor-in-chief of the internationally renowned journal Fire Ecology. We're pleased to have three people here to talk about a very, very important paper, Epiphytic lichens as ladder fuels, an experimental study on flammability in southern Chile. And we have three of the authors here to talk about it. We have Korina, Carolina, and Melisa. Korina, can you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, I am Korina Ocampo-Zuleta, one of the lead authors of this study. I am a postdoctoral researcher focused on fire adaptive traits and plant invasion in Chile, currently affiliated with the Institute of Ecology and Biodiversity at the University of Concepción, Chile.
Well, welcome. Thank you for coming today. And Carolina, how about you?
Hi, everyone. I'm very well, and thank you for your interest in our research. I'm Carolina Quintero, also a researcher at the INIBioma Institute, placed here in Bariloche, Argentina. And we are here in representation of the interdisciplinary team of researchers that lead this work, especially of the senior researchers who came up with this idea and collected the data, Natalia Quiñones, a researcher at the Lichen Herbarium of the University of Valparaíso, and Fabián Guerrero, the director of the ICIFA, which is the Applied Forest Science team at the Federico Santa Maria Technical University, both from Chile.
We wish they could be here, but thank you for coming. And Melisa, you want to talk about who you are?
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Melisa Blackhall. I'm also a researcher at INIBioma with Carolina, INIBioma CONICET, Universidad Nacional del Comahue in Patagonia, Argentina. I work on fire ecology and plant flammability, and particularly in temperate forests of southern South America.
Welcome to you as well. Korina, can you tell us a little about the study? What's it all about?
Yes, of course. In this study, we looked at something that's been largely overlooked in fire science, lichens. These organisms are incredibly abundant worldwide, covering up to 8% of the terrestrial surface, and they are particularly relevant in temperate rainforests and moist forests, such as those present in southern Chile. They are rarely considered in fire behavior research. What we found is that lichens ignite very easily, similarly to them well-known pine beetles from the most flammable plants in the forest, but more uniquely, they can act as ladder fuels, helping fire move from the ground into the canopy. In practical terms, this means that they can increase the likelihood that survives fire, which is usually easier to control transitions into a campfire, which is far more intense and difficult to manage. By creating vertical continuity in the fuel structures, lichens don't just participate in the ignition. They can also amplify fire spread and severity, playing a much larger role than previously thought, especially in the context of climate change.
Yeah, I was so glad to see this paper be submitted to Fire Ecology because lichens and ladder fuels are very, very important in fire ecology. And we were so glad to see this study. When I read the paper, I knew there was something really special about these methods. And I was wondering if you could talk about the methods and maybe give us a peek at the results.
Sure. What's interesting about our approach is that we use controlled laboratory experiments to isolate specific factors like moisture and lichen morphology. We expose lichen samples to high temperatures using an epiradiator, which is a well-known device that simulates the radiant heat of wildfire. With this equipment, we were able to measure things like probability of a sample to initiate ignition, how long samples take to ignite and sustain the flame, as well as how long they burn in total. These allow us to directly compare the four species, meaning the two morphologies and the two experimental conditions, hydrated and dehydrated lichen samples, in a way that is going to be very hard to do in real fires. So the control experiment was a very special approach.
And Melisa, what was the impetus behind the study? And you talk about how the results can be used by others.
Yes. So one of the more striking results was that all lichens show extremely high flammability with ignition frequencies close to 100%, even under moist conditions. So similar to what other well-known fine fuels, moisture did matter. Wet lichens took much longer to ignite, approximately 11 times longer, but once they start burning, their behavior was quite similar, with lichen morphology playing a minor role. So the response to moisture suggests that lichens have a kind of dual role. When they are wet, wet, they can delay ignition and slightly dampen fire behavior. But when conditions become dry, which is exclusively common with climate change, they dry out very quickly and become highly flammable. So under future scenarios with more frequent and severe droughts, lichens may shift from being relatively neutral or even buffering fuels to actually promoting fire spread, acting as effective ladder fuels.
And Melissa, do you have anything else to add to that?
These findings suggest that lichens should be included in fire behavior models, especially in ecosystems where they are abundant. Right now, most models ignore epiphytic biomass, which could lead to underestimating fire spread, particularly vertical spread into the canopy. For managers, this means recognizing that what might look like a background organism could actually contribute to fire intensity, especially during drought conditions. Incorporating this type of information will allow us to move from simplified models toward more complete and realistic representation of forest fuel systems, especially improving predictions on fire spread rates and overall fire behavior under different climate conditions.
Most of the models don't even pay attention to epiphytic lichens and anything like that.
Yes.
So I was so glad you did this study. Korina, do you have anybody else you want to recognize, funding agencies or other co-authors?
Yes, we would like to thank all our co-authors for their contributions, as well as the funding agency that supported this work, the National Research Development Agency of Chile, ANID, and the staff at Conguillillo National Park for facilitating fieldwork.
Thank you three for coming and sharing this wonderful paper with us today. I was so glad that you were all able to make it from way, way away from here. And thanks for talking to the people about this. You listeners, if this paper interests you, guess what? You can download it for free from our website. That's right, free, because these wonderful authors have already paid the freight for you to go ahead and download the paper. So read all about epiphytic lichens and their role in forest fuels. And please, again, tune into the next Fire Ecology Chats.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you for listening to Fire Ecology Chats, a podcast series by the Association for Fire Ecology. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to our show and leave us a review. To learn more about fire ecology and support our future work by becoming a member, visit fireecology.org. FIREECOLOGY.org.